Welcome back. This go around, we are getting back on these cabinets and gonna get this laundry room completed. We've been staring at this thing just as long as the stairs in the last video that you've seen on the remodel of those. And we've had these cabinets now for probably over a month, and it's finally kind of time to do something with them. So we're gonna experiment. I'm not an interior painter guy. I actually can't stand doing it. You see I'm out in the shop, S10's behind me, and it's just kind of begging, please come back, come back. And we can't do that until we make mom happy. So we're gonna experiment to see if we can spray this cabinet paint with that Nico 2.0 tip gun that I use for primers. And I also use that on that feather fill, which is that sprayable filler. It's a 2.0 tip. I don't know what it's gonna do. It's a gravity feed. Hate to buy a Wagner for such a small job, so we're gonna experiment with this cabinet right here. So first and foremost, let's get it masked up. Liam's already been going around to all these cabinets and pulling the paper and the tape and the staples and everything out and helping me out with that. So with any luck, can we get automotive grade finish on a cabinet? Your guess is as good as mine. All right, since I am an automotive guy, I took the automotive approach on these. Now, the top of the cabinets and the bottom of the cabinets, well, the top of the cabinets, I really don't even care if there's overspray or anything on it because you're not gonna see it anyway. We'll put a finish molding at the top of that whenever it's, all the cabinets are painted and hung. But the bottom of it, we're gonna go ahead and paint that the exterior color. I mean, it's not a bad, and these are just builder grade cabinets. They're nothing fancy, but they're for a laundry room. You don't see them very often anyway. Now the door, it's gonna get painted the same color front and back. So no masking, we'll spray that, let it sit. Once everything dries, we'll flip it, spray again, complete. So we're going to go with the easy one first. If we're going to make mistakes, let's do it on the smallest cabinet. But then we have a double cabinet here, a double cabinet there, and then of course the pantry cabinet. So let's start mixing our paint up and just see what it's going to do to this gun. Again, this is the Nico gun that I use for spraying primers on our auto body projects, as well as the feather fill. But we just dumped that cabinet paint straight from Lowe's right into the cup. Just see what it does. She set up. Oh, well, right now I'm just trying to get some coverage on it. This wood's gonna suck up a lot of this paint, so I'm not really trying to go heavy. I'm just trying to get a coating on it. So for the cabinet guys out there smacking your head, I'm not a cabinet guy. Most dads out there are not cabinet guys. Can we just get some paint on this? Is there a better way than just spray rolling this thing on without buying a lot of tools? Will it work? So far so good. The only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the amount of volume, again, because this paint is so thick. So we may have to make some adjustments, but let's just keep going. The way it's not bad, not gonna lie, but I'm glad I'm not doing this to like a Chevy Nova. We're spraying this with an automotive finish gun, so what do you expect, right? I mean, we can still get to the finish line doing this way. You just really gotta lay it on. All right, so we kept plugging away just the same way we were doing, from the paint can straight to the paint cup. And although it does spray it, I mean, we knew that was gonna be a little thick for an automotive grade paint gun. It's not bad. All right, so we went ahead and finished up the paint job on the other three cabinets and got this one up here on the sawhorses and prepping this thing to paint. Now, this has a flip down door that way and a flip out door this way. I could not buy this thing with the doors swinging the way that we want them, so we are gonna be swapping those from one side to the other, which should be a pretty easy job. Now, the middle here has a slide out drawer, which I already took that off. Don't overthink these. These are just one screw, and then the rails pop right out of there. So real easy to get those apart. But I saved the biggest for last, and this thing, I'm telling you what, is like a casket laying this way. So we are gonna get busting this thing out, and then we gotta tear that laundry room apart so we can plan and install all this stuff. So it's gonna be fun, good times. We're not gonna waste any more time on the paint process on those cabinets. I think you get the drift. Let me show you this laundry room because this is what we're talking about in the first place. I went ahead and removed the door to the laundry room because all these big cabinets, it's gonna be a whole lot easier getting that out of the way. We don't have to fight working around that. Good sized laundry room, not oversized, but not overly small at the same time. You can see that there's room in here now. My wife's gonna kill you. She's gonna be like, oh, it's a mess in there, why are you showing it? But you know what? This is the reason why we're doing this in the first place, is because we just don't have the storage that we need. Now this is a traditional wire rack. See them everywhere. Nothing wrong with that, but we want cabinets. Wash tub sink. Thought it was a great idea in the beginning when we built this house, but we've probably used it less than 5 times in 9 years, so sink's gonna go. But the first and foremost is, after the cabinets are painted, we got to get this sink removed, which means that we're going to have to pull the PEX lines out and cap those down in the crawl space. And we're also going to have to cut a little sliver in the drywall where the plumbing comes through for the drain, and we got to cap that because that drain goes through the studs and is tied in with the washing machine drain going down to the crawl space. So since we're going to deadhead cap that, we won't have to worry about that leaking in the wall or doing anything crazy. And then at that point, we can get our measurements from the tall cabinet, and we're going to have to nip out our trim because that's why. It's got to go against the wall flush here and against the back all the way, and that trim's going to offset it. It's just going to look like a mess. So we're going to cut the trim, put the cabinet in place, and then we're going to trim around the cabinet to make it look like it was built in from the original build. I was asked by some people that knew that we were doing this project what color this is, and I don't remember right off the bat. It does kind of look like some sort of a kind of like a sagey green color. My wife picked out that color, and I think she did a good job. It's a really nice color, and it's just something different. Everything in the kitchen's white. Everything's traditional these days. It's either white or gray, or so she wanted to go with a little different color, and if we like that, heck, who knows, we might do the kitchen that color. We'll see. The only thing they got holding this thing in is a screw here and a screw here. Underneath the sink is pretty traditional plumbing. You got your downpipe, you got your P-trap, and it goes right in there. And then, of course, you got a hot water supply line. So the sink is out and just cut just enough sheetrock to get around the plumbing and all that. But you can see that the 2 water supply lines, cold and hot water, is missing. Just nipped those off, pulled them down through the crawl space, put a cap in it, and then PEX crimped those down. We'll use those for the basement. And then the drain line, it was just as simple as making sure you got a nice, flat, even cut, and then using the primer and the plumber's glue and all that. But we capped that thing off, and we're not even going to seal this wall up. It's an interior wall, there's no insulation, and the cabinet's going to completely cover this. So we're just going to let that ride. But we do have to go through, take all this junk down, and pull that rack off and all the little plastic brackets and whatnot. But what do you think? Some progress at last. The paint finally dried on this large cabinet, and we was able to nip our trim and slide this bad boy in here and tell me what you think. And I'm also going to tell you the tool that I used on this trim removal. But on the trim, now you could have gone about this 2 different ways. We could have disconnected the washer and the dryer, been out of service for that for the next couple days, pop the trim off that goes from this wall all the way back there. Same deal with this all the way around here. But very little of this down here you're going to be able to see. And once we get all of our stuff in here, you're not going to be able to see that either. So how did I get such a tight fit without removing the trim? If you haven't seen one of these tools are amazing. I've heard these called an oscillating tool. I've heard these called a multifunction tool. I call it a multifunction tool. Basically just has a little blade at the end, and when you kick it on, you can just take it any which direction and just zip it right in there and make your cuts. So I did my measurements on how wide the base is and deducted that from that trim and did the same thing this way. And this was a 1-cut operation. I did not have to go back and make any final touches, but you can even see down there, it's just an absolute flawless joint. Now it is a butt joint. They're not tapered or 45, but I think what we're going to do is just kind of let the trim go over here and not even put anything. And we might just take a piece of this 1/4 round that they finish off the bottom of these baseboards with, and we may just tie in a piece of 1/4 round just around the bottom to cover up that little gap at the bottom. So we have toughed it through the install process, and here's getting a close-up of our final product. The doors, the drawer, bottom door, of course the shelves, everything put in place. Same as this was the small, I want to say this was a 12-inch wide. These were 24-inch wide each, single door. And then of course we set this up to where that one flips out that way, this one flips out that way to have a large space, makes the most of the room. But you can see they came out really good. Paint and the finish came out really good. And these strips right here, like I said, these are all going to get filler strips put in between them to tie all these together. So there's going to be no gaps from wall to wall. And of course, we'll do some crown trim at the very top of it. And that may be for a later date, different video, but no, it won't. She heard that. Anyway, we might do that at a later date. But we're going to hang it up for tonight. Really satisfied with the way this looks. Now, on the bottom down here, there is a few holes that we're going to have to patch where that original wire rack was, but that's not a big deal because we're going to repaint this whole laundry room. But one thing, forgive me for the dryer running. We're going to go ahead and tackle this crown molding that goes at the top of this. So we got our saw set up out in the garage, and we are going to start tearing after this. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this so it is as little confusing as possible, but sometimes trim can be difficult, especially when you don't do it all the time, like me. So what I typically do in these situations when I'm going to have some odd angled trim and stuff is I take one of the pieces that I bought and I cut off just the edges of both of them. That way, maybe about 8 inches or so off of each side. That way I can get my test cuts done first. Now, if this was like a baseboard or a molding that went around a door that lays completely flat, it's not really that big of a deal. You're really 45 cutting, and just getting your length measurements and putting it all together. But then since this is a crown molding that we're going to use on the top of that cabinet, this molding is made to sit on 2 angles. So your ceiling would go here and your wall would go down here. So that's why you can see how it's tapered right here and it is tapered right here. Well, this is the part right here that is actually going to get nailed into the cabinet. So that being said, whenever this is mounted, it's going to be mounted this way and you're going to nail it in this way. So your typical 45 straight up and down cut, if we cut it on this angle, it's going to be way off. We're actually going to have to cut it in the way that this is going to be installed. So I found on these little test pieces that 45 degrees actually left just a little bit of a gap where these 2 joints would meet. So I did a retest of 46 degrees on both sides and I had a perfect fit. So we're going to cut these on a 46-degree angle. So we're going to get this all set up for these pieces and we're going to get to cutting. One thing's for sure is my mama didn't let this baby grow up to be a cowboy. We are going to set this up in our saw the way that it would be installed. Now luckily this saw here has a laser guide and it's pretty accurate. You got to definitely take into account the thickness of the saw blade. I know that's a common mistake. I do it all the time. I'm not a professional at any of this stuff. I'm just kind of the handyman DIY dad. It has it in my heart to show you these things, to hopefully encourage you to get out in the garage and, you know, tackle that project or have a better understanding if you should sub it out to the professionals, because I've done that too. There's plenty of things that I said, nope, not even going to try. The more you do it, the more you start getting comfortable. When you start looking down the barrel of a project, you start recognizing what needs to be done, what tools you're going to need, what supplies you're going to need. And, you know, and those, you know, all those little characteristics of knowledge of the things that you learn as you go doing this stuff, it carries on to the next project. I'll give you an example. Wire rack in our master closet collapsed. Well, we had entirely way too much weight on that thing and it completely collapsed. And so I just repaired that earlier today. I didn't make a video on it. It's not that important to show how to put a wire rack back up. But that wire rack, there was a couple spots on it where the bottom, I guess you'd call it wire. It's, you know, it's a little piece of round steel. It's where your clothes slide, you know, on the hangers. Well, that had broke off in 2 spots, but the whole rack was good. So what did I do? I brought it out here, fired up the welder, cleaned the areas up, welded it back on. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Being out here in the shop, learning how to do a welder and how to weld and fabricate and do metalworking. Well, that carried on to a benefit that we was able to use into the house. So just because you get into the shop, it doesn't mean that the things and the education you learn being out here stops here. It transfers into real world, home, DIY. You get a better understanding with electrical. And again, I wouldn't tell you to go dive right into that without a full understanding of the codes and, you know, the code enforcement, but you know, you start understanding things and making sense of how this stuff works, and then you realize it's not that difficult. Then you get a lot more confident in tackling that next project. So I'm going to take this thing in, see how she fits, and then we're going to come back out and cut our little 45 that goes That way. All right, well, that piece was a perfect fit. So we went ahead and jammed a battery in our airstrike nailer here, and we're gonna go ahead and tack this bad boy into place. All right, I like the way that looks, so we're gonna go ahead and get one on this side. We're gonna go ahead and tack one into this cabinet. We're gonna work our way on down to the end here. I don't think it's really gonna be necessary to put any through the center. Keep in mind, we're gonna put filler strips, little wood strips, right in between these things. They'll get painted green just to match to make this look like it's seamless from here all the way to the wall. And of course the same over here. And there'll be a little bit of a step down, and then we'll do trim on top of this pantry cabinet as well. But when we're through with this, we'll have a nice molding that comes from the wall, goes back that way. Then that one will come from the wall, tie into that one, all the way across. Of course, it's going to need to be painted. But this is how you really take a set of what they call builder grade cabinets, which, yeah, they're cheaper cabinets. This is for a laundry room. It's all right. But can we take these builder cabinets, these builder grade cabinets, and make these things look professional? And I think the answer to that is yes. All right, so we're running up here to the end here. So crown molding, put on the top, also kind of like jogs down here a little bit and continues over to the wall. We got our separation strips installed between each one. All those look really good. And all we're going to do now, this doesn't take anything fancy. This is just some leftover joint compound. And it's already white, and you can smash just a little bit of that in each one of those nail holes, and it dries quickly, and we'll be painting on this thing in no time. So we're going to go ahead and get these holes filled in, and we'll be back with some paint brushes in just a moment. All right, we are rapidly approaching the end of our budget faux built-in cabinets, and we are going to slap on the rest of the green paint that goes on the trim of these. Now, we're just going to brush this. I know we sprayed everything else, but we're going to brush this trim. This is a super smooth brush, lays it out really flat, and it'll blend it in no problem. So let's get to painting. We are finished with our project, and I couldn't be happier with the way they've turned out. These builder grade cabinets sure have made a 180 to transform this laundry room into a more comfortable, with way more storage environment for doing laundry. You can see now with the project complete how I've explained the whole way with the crown molding and the separation strips. It all ties these cabinets together and make these look like they were built in. You can see for comparison how much more storage we have now. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to make my wife extremely pleased to see, and just absolute wonderful finish. We are going to have to do one more coat of paint on this trim to get it fully covered, but this will wrap up this project. Total cost for this do-it-yourself project, around $900. That's with cabinets, paint, trim, all the hardware needed. So don't rule out the contractors, because they can get it done and they can get it done for you fast. But if you are thinking about doing a project like this yourself, it's completely doable with home tools, and you could save yourself a whole lot of money. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like this content, and check back with us real soon, because we're getting a little bit delayed. We got to get back on that race truck. We want to get that thing going and get that frame painted so we can start putting it together.